You're listening to the Holistic Health Front podcast.
Whether you've already taken steps towards a healthier life,
or you're just starting to explore this path,
this podcast aims to help all of us live longer and more energized lives,
so we can all do the things we want and be the person we know we can be.
We bring on functional health experts, parents, professionals, and everyday people who want to make positive changes in their lives.
And we create powerful conversations about how to feel good in a fun, easy, and understandable way,
so you can live the most fulfilling life possible.
Enjoy today's discussion and let us hear your thoughts in our Powerful People Facebook group.
The information presented in this podcast is not meant to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease.
If you have any questions about your health or the health of a loved one, please consult your healthcare practitioner.
Now let's begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Holistic Health Front podcast. We are here to create powerful conversations around health and wellness and just kind of invite everybody into a space that's really uplifting and empowering. And hopefully we can all grow into even better versions of ourselves and do better in the world and be more aligned with who we truly want to be. My name is Tyler Atwell, and we're here with Stephanie Cook.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, and so we are a couple faces of the Holistic Health Front. We have a larger group as a whole, and we are health and wellness professionals who want to team up, and we want to work together to make a greater impact in the world, because we believe as a community, as a whole, we can do a lot greater good in this world, as opposed to just trying to take it all on individually as one person, right? And that doesn't limit the power of one individual, but when you can take the power of one individual and put them into a group that's aligned and focused on a similar goal and similar trajectory, we can do truly amazing things in the world. And that's really what this podcast is it's an invitation to you, the listener, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, into a bigger conversation, a deeper conversation, and to team up and be a part of something special, right? So Absolutely. We have a group online, right? We have a group online called the Powerful People Community. It's a Facebook group for now. Who knows, it might expand or evolve in the future, but for now it's a Facebook group, and it's a place where you can go to interact with us. You can interact with other listeners of this show, or you can invite other powerful people who are in your life into this community as well. And we can come into it together, and we can discuss bigger things in this world and discuss how we individually can be better for ourselves and for our family and for our communities, and we hold each other accountable and all of that. So a whole bunch of goodness. But Stephanie, today we're talking about our healthcare system. We're in the pharmaceutical industry and doctors and stuff like that, which I know can be a pretty controversial discussion at times, right? Because I don't know about you, but I know people who are all over the spectrum on it, all the way from I trust doctors completely with my life and I'll do whatever they tell me to do because they know best, to I will never go see a doctor ever because I think that they're going to kill me, right? So I know people all over the spectrum. What about you? What does it look like in your... Mm-hmm.
Same thing. And that's the great thing about, personal choice and personal power, is to be able to do that. And I think that, there's threads of truth in everybody's opinion, and it's just trying to land on what works and aligns with you. So we'll just kind of have a conversation and see how that, where we end up, navigating for that. But yes, that's true.
Totally.
I've got both. I have close, dear friends that are in the medical profession, that are practicing physicians. And then I have people that are in the more holistic, wellness world, everything from Chinese medicine to, chiropractic care to herbs and all that type of stuff. So, we're blessed that we have a large range that we can talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when thinking about this, why do you think that there even is this distrust from anybody when it comes to our medical system, right? Because we know that people have to go to school for years and years, like a decade sometimes, a long time to get this knowledge and this understanding and these certifications, and they have to do a certain amount of practice and continued education. How come with all of that, still there's distrust, do you think? I mean, have you noticed anything?
I think some of it's personal experience. I think with the system that we have, and this is going to be my best guess based on the people that I've worked with, the system that we have, the medical healthcare model that we have is a disjointed system. So we see an optometrist for our eyes. We see a GI specialist for our gut health. We see a female specialist, OBGYN, for our female parts. We see a cardiologist for our heart. I can keep going on and on and on, right? And so because of that, you have a podiatrist, it's a disjointed system. And so I don't necessarily think it's a lack of trust in one individual. I think it's a lack of trust and confidence in the way the system is set up. And I can just share with you personal experience with, I went to an OBGYN, for one thing. And then I went to a dermatologist for another thing. And then, I went to my regular medical doctor for another thing, and information wasn't being shared. And so, when I showed up in my medical doctor's office and he was specifically inquiring about the type of birth control that I was on, which was from my OBGYN, which then was an inquiry about my dermatologist because I was diagnosed with melanoma cancer, which was a skin issue. Everybody was saying different things. You can't take birth control pills if you know that you have skin cancer. Birth control pills gravely affect the way that melanoma cancer grows, for example, and then you have your regular, but nobody's talking to each other, right? And I don't think the distrust is in the person themselves, because I think my dermatologist was accurate about my melanoma diagnosis. And I think my OBGYN was accurate about the type of birth control that I used at that time. This was years ago. And I think my MD was accurate about the condition that I was in, just my overall health. You have nothing to worry about. And so, but nobody was talking to each other. And I think that's where the distrust comes from. I don't think that one individual didn't make an informed, decision about what they were sharing and consulting with me. But it's the fact that we have this disjointed system. I think that's what it is. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think that's the reason that we have that. And even with my own personal experience with my father, when my father was in the hospital, you had a cardiologist come and check on what was going on because he had bypass surgery. We also had a brain doctor come in because he did have he had a blockage in his brain through a stroke. And so we were seeing so many different people, and medications were being delivered and stuff like that. But there didn't seem to be this connection between all the different advice we were getting and all the different doctors and surgeons that we were getting. And I really think that's where the frustration comes into, and that's where the distrust comes into. And I really don't think it's individual, because all the individual physicians, doctors, surgeons that I've personally worked with, had conversations with, are genuinely caring people that took an oath to do no harm and, really got into this profession for the purpose of helping others. Because it is if you ask me, it is definitely an occupation of service. The doctors that I know, the hours that they spend away from their family to take care of my family are huge, right? So I definitely think those people go into it with an act of service, but I think the system itself creates a disjointed information, and that's where I think the lack of trust comes from. And that's just my personal opinion, but that's just been my experience with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought of it that way, right? Yeah, it's like there's a lot of different silos when it comes to the health experts that we have,
right?
Whether they're in our life or just available to us in life. There's a lot of experts, or which is, in one hand, it's a good thing, right? Because you want somebody who is the person who's looking at the brain, you want them to have a very specialized knowledge in the brain, and that person's going to have a different, but the issue being that there's almost like this breakage in the connection and the communication.
Yes.
And a lot of times these doctors are not coming in with the full context of their patient.
Right.
like in front of them, right? So they're making decisions on your health without
Right.
having the full context of your health in front of them or
Yeah.
easily consumable, which is interesting. I've never really thought about it that way. And I know that people have medical records, right? And
Right.
medical records,
Yeah.
but as a doctor, and you can tell me, I don't know, does a doctor have access to your complete medical record? Like if you
Well,
go to the hospital, can they see the history of your health, and are they actually looking
the
at
answer
that?
is it depends on which system that you're in, right? I mean, because there's people that have moved from out of state. And so, you can call that office and say, hey, can I get the records? And then they'll be sent in, right? If you've stayed within a system, like my father's down in a system in Southern Illinois, and within that Southern Illinois system, it's called Southern Illinois Healthcare, that's what it's called, they have access to all the different practitioners that he's seen. But if we do something outside of that system, the medical records have to be requested. And so it's not all right there. Just immediately available. And the other thing that happens is that I also think that doctors are often given mandates by insurance companies. I mean, this is another little, web that we weave. And so insurance companies say, well, based on you, doctor, what you've said, they'll disagree with a doctor's prognosis or a doctor's recommendations. And so now you leave a doctor with, okay, I can't recommend this medication because the health insurance won't pay for it, or I can't recommend this procedure because the health insurance won't pay for it. So then you've got doctors backing off saying, okay, I want to provide care for this person, but based on the insurance, the private insurance that this person carries, I'm not able to recommend them because they're not covered and the person doesn't, can't afford them private pay. So then you have doctors that are backing up again and saying, okay, it's very frustrating to be a doctor. I work with doctors. It's very frustrating to be a doctor because now you've got a doctor saying, this is what I think is best for the patient. But the insurance company who hasn't seen the patient, hasn't talked to the patient, doesn't even, hasn't laid eyes on the patient is now saying, based on this particular formula, we don't agree. We don't think that procedure is necessary. We don't think that test is necessary. And so that leaves the doctor having to do things, they have to ratchet back things that they would recommend. And again, that creates this whole, what's going on? Because when I talk to you, they're just not given, it's all this, it's a system thing. I really don't think it's an individual thing. And that's just me personally. I've never met a bad doctor. They've all been sincerely in the game to help, but I have met a lot of doctors that don't have all the information. And that is where the frustration, confusion, and distrust comes from, in my opinion.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. When we're talking about this question of is our healthcare system broken? There's a few different pillars that we need to look at for this conversation, right? And on one hand, we have the doctors and the surgeons and the specialists, the coaches, et cetera, that are all involved in our healthcare system.
Right.
Those are the practitioners. But then on the other hand, you have the insurance companies. And then on the other hand, another pillar, you have the prescription companies, like the actual drug manufacturers.
Absolutely.
And I, for the most part, I agree with you about doctors and surgeons. My stepdad was a doctor. My girlfriend's dad is a doctor. And because of those close connections I have, I've been able to meet other, more doctors, I think, than a normal person who isn't, would have access to. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, people become doctors because they truly want to help people and they want to do good in this world. And yeah, it is a job of service. I mean, you're on call. I mean, most doctors are on call 24/7, and it doesn't matter if you're on vacation. It doesn't matter if you're tired or sleeping. You could have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever, and get up, put your stuff on and head out to go see a patient.
Yeah.
It's a demanding job,
It is.
And there's a lot of pressure because there's a lot of expectation. So I certainly have empathy for a lot of doctors. With that said, I have experienced very lazy doctors as well. And it did rub me the wrong way at certain points, right? Where there was one point where I back in 2014, I was having immense stomach pains, terrible stomach pains. And it was like, I was like bent over and just, I couldn't do anything. It hurt so bad. And it was just so consistent, persistent. I went to go see a doctor, and I go to the doctor's office, and I'm in there for maybe like 20 minutes. And then the doctor comes in, and doctor looks at me, he looks at my chart, and he's like, "You have stomach pains?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, too much stress. I'm going to prescribe you this medication."
Yeah.
Within like 2-3 minutes. I mean, literally like no discussion, no questions, nothing. Just walked in. "All right, I'm prescribing you this medication." And it was a strong prescription medication that he prescribed me. Well, and I'm like, what? How do you just walk in here and say that, "Oh, that's what it is," and you take this without asking me any questions or doing any sort of work? Yeah, right. And it turns out I had an ulcer, which could have been, it could have gotten worse if I would have taken that prescription medicine. Right. Especially if I took it on an empty stomach or anything like that. But all in the same, he was treating the wrong thing. Right. And he didn't give the time of day to actually understand what's actually going on here. He just kind of came in and said, like, "Here's your drug." And having my stepdad being a doctor, what he taught me, not even what he taught me, just what I saw from being in his office, because oftentimes I would be in his office quite a bit as a teenager and young adult, and every day, here comes this charismatic rep from some drug company talking about, "We're going to pay you this much money if you recommend this drug." I see how many sweetheart incentives doctors get to just prescribe drugs without putting too much thought into it. And I know that like it can be a very profitable game for them. They can make a lot of money if they just give these drugs as like a blanket solution to a lot of issues are more complex than they are on the surface, right? Like a headache just isn't just a headache. A headache has a lot of things that are underneath it causing that to happen. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think the lack of time that a doctor spends because of the amount of turnover that they have in their offices and things like that is part of that system as well. You know, you spent 20 minutes with somebody, when that wasn't enough time to uncover what needed to be done. And I would say, one of the things that I would say to our viewers is, when you left that, I'm asking you, Tyler, when you left that meeting, did you go, "Wow, this guy's right on," or was your gut instinct going like, whoa, time out, right? So what I want to say immediately the flags, like the red flags, you're like, whoa. So what I would like to tell people that are listening to this is that if you have an experience like Tyler had, and you don't feel comfortable about what was said, you don't feel like you were heard, you don't feel like the doctor asked the right questions, took the right time, maybe ordered up the right test, especially in today's information. Most patients have been on the internet looking up all of their symptoms, right? So the patient comes in and says, "I don't think it's this, I don't think it's that, it might be this," If you have that feeling, then you need to go see somebody else. You need to reach out to somebody else. You can reach out to holistic practitioners. You can reach out to just another doctor across town. Ask friends and family, who do you see? Who's your doctor? But you walked away feeling like that was not good. And I am so proud of you for going, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to do more investigating. And I want patients to feel like they have the right to disagree, to feel uncomfortable. And a lot of people aren't going to push back. Everybody's personality is different, right? They're not going to push back against a practitioner, but you can come home and be like, "That didn't feel right. I want to go talk to somebody else." And oftentimes we just don't give ourselves that permission to do that.
This episode is brought to you by oxygen and carbon dioxide. Breathe deep, breathe slow. Are you tired of nagging headaches, body pains, and feeling like you've been steamrolled by 2 p.m.? Want to feel more alive with a clearer mind, voice, and skin?
Yep.
And not to mention getting rid of that pesky BO when the deodorant starts to wear off?
Ew.
Introducing to you today, water. Did you know that 75% of American adults are chronically dehydrated? And did you know that majority of people who are dehydrated think that they actually are hydrated? That means most people are not drinking enough water. But if they did, and they realized how much of a massive difference it makes in how they feel to be hydrated, they would realize that water can change their life. So drink more water. Aim for 96 fluid ounces per day minimum for adults. Side effects include peeing more often the first couple of weeks, but don't worry, it will slow down soon. I know I should really drink less caffeine. I just wish there was some way of getting energy in the morning without a coffee. The sun! Wait a minute. I feel good. Especially when I close my eyes and stare at the sun through my eyelids. Wow, this is great! I think I'm ready to crush this day now. Thanks, sun! The Sun. Use it for free, with care. Hey y'all, hope you've enjoyed these goofy little commercials. The information is all accurate and valid, so please use the tips we shared. Even though we're having fun and being silly recording them, they're still 100% meant to support you and entertain you. We'll be getting back to the show in just a minute, but first, I want to really encourage you to join our free community on Facebook. It's called the Powerful People Community, and it's a place where you can interact with other listeners of the show, including me, our other coaches and co-hosts and everybody. And it's a place where you can ask questions publicly or anonymously. You can request episode topics, you can share your story, and celebrate with a group of really amazing people who will also be celebrating you. So we really hope to see you in the community. We think we're building something really special because we believe when you bring together a group of powerful people, there's just so many great things we can do in this world, more than we could do on our own. So we're building a special community and we hope to talk to you there soon. Now, let's get back to the show.
So that's one thing that I
100%.
encourage everybody to do when you do have those experiences. Follow your gut. Follow your gut instinct.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. While doctors, most doctors are really good. Some doctors just aren't as into it. Like to them, it's just a job, etc. But always, regardless of whether your doctor is good intentions, bad intentions, how much experience they have, how knowledgeable or smart they have, let's always bring our critical thinking into our appointments with us and remember that we are the experts of our own bodies. Right. And a doctor can simultaneously be really smart and really well-intentioned, and also be wrong about you or what's going on with you. Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and that's when I tell people I've done end of life care with my mother, and I'm currently, the power of attorney and caregiver for my father. And I say so often when I'm in these situations, what does somebody who doesn't have an advocate do in situations like this? Because, my mother and father weren't able to ask all the questions, weren't able to hold all the information. And I encourage people, if you are in a position where you're not strong in your resolve and knowing what you want and what you want to do, bring a friend, bring a family, reach out to a health coach, have somebody that will advocate with you and for you. Anytime you're in a doctor's office, it feels like an exam. Do you remember exam day when you guys were in school and your nerves are already up? You're like, oh shit, I'm being assessed, right? And anytime you're being assessed, your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, goes up and you don't quite absorb information the same way. And so even on your best day, you're walking into a doctor's office. This happened to me. My best day, I'm walking into the doctor's office thinking everything is fine. And they said, you have melanoma cancer. And I went, I didn't hear a thing after that, right? I didn't hear anything. Blah, 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 blah. It was like the Charlie Brown. Because once you triggered my fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, everything else just didn't stick, right? And so then I was told, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I just nodded in agreement because I didn't really have a whole lot of time to think about it. So I encourage people, when you get that type of information, go home and share it with your loved ones, share it with somebody that you know can be your advocate. And whether or not they have a health background or not, when they're once removed, they can hold the space for discussions and intellectual questions that when you're the patient with the diagnosis, if you're feeling that footing slip out from underneath you, take somebody with you, because that can make a huge difference, because you kind of don't know what questions to ask sometimes when you're hit with information.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I agree. As far as having an advocate, I completely agree. Having somebody who can be there with you to ask questions, guide you, and be able to just take in the information with you so that you have a second brain there, a second memory there to take in the details. I will say, though, that be careful with friends and family while they love you and they have really good intentions. I would make sure that whoever's advocating for you is either a professional coach or they have the health and wellness that you desire, right? Or exceptional health and wellness, and they understand a little bit more, right? Because you can bring an advocate with you who just doesn't understand just as well as you, right? And that can be harmful at times, right?
A detriment.
The people closest to you can be the most what's the word?
Well, there's emotional attachment. The stakes are high.
They can be the most, what's the word? I can't think of it right now. If somebody persuadable, they can be the most persuadable because they can talk you into something, even if you don't feel like it's the best for you, or you're just not even sure. And because you love this person and they took the time to be an advocate for you and they're suggesting it, you're going to feel like, oh, I should do what they say because I asked them to be there with me.
Right. Yeah. Right? That's a really good point. You should vet your person. They should be vetted before that you spend time with them, and they should know a little bit about you and what your goals are. A little bit about you. So that, what your goals are and what your desires are and how you think about health and wellness and well-being and things like that. So that's a really, really good point, because you are right. I have, just in being a health coach over the last 20 years, I have had people that were very persuasive. That was a great word, by the way, that you finally came up with. Yeah, right. Very persuasive in pulling a person, because you're not quite, your footing is just not really solid, when you're struggling with a diagnosis. And so, I've had clients that have been pulled. I could tell they were being pulled a direction they didn't choose to go, and that was disheartening for me, to sit down with a client and a client tell me, I really like this. I really want to do this. This is my heart's desire. And then you have a friend or family member that completely doesn't agree. And so I that's a really good point, Tyler, that you have to be careful about who you have advocate for you, for sure. For sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Definitely.
And it's good to have other opinions, and that's why it's important. Yeah, if you walk out of a doctor's appointment and you feel like something might be wrong here, I might not completely agree, or even if you do completely agree, sometimes be weary of our confirmation bias, right? If we are really quick to agree with a doctor, make sure that something that could be right? Like trust your gut, that could be right, but make sure you interrogate it a little bit and be like, all right, am I wanting this to be the answer because it's the outcome that I thought it would be, or because I think that this is the, it's good to have second opinions, and especially if it's a major diagnosis.
If it's a major diagnosis, especially. Yeah.
Especially, right.
Yeah. Well, and in today's information world, when I was diagnosed with my melanoma cancer, the internet wasn't what it is today. I'm 55 years old, and that happened when I was 25. So that was 30 years ago. And, just the access, you guys laugh. I actually went to the library. I went to the library because I'm this type of person and looked stuff up, because I was like, wait a minute, what is that? And I looked stuff up myself because I have that type of mind. I have that curious mind. Anybody that knows me knows that I don't like the footnotes. I'm the one that's going to go deep, the Cliff Notes. I'm the one that's going to go deep and ask for more. But in today's information world, you have to be careful about the information that you read, but you also have access to information that we didn't have 30 years ago, so you can do a little bit of research yourself, and then again, get with somebody that's got some background that can help sort out, what you need and what you want and what your desires are, based on your whole approach. The other thing I think that happens with the distrust that we feel, that a lot of people feel with the medical community, is that you don't a lot of patients aren't forthcoming with everything that's going on with them. And what I mean by that is I'm coming to you and I'm sitting in your doctor's office because of a melanoma diagnosis, for example. But I might not feel comfortable sharing with you other things that are going on with me. I could be struggling with depression. I don't want to talk about it. I could be struggling with infertility. I don't want to talk about it. I could be struggling with anxiety or focus or brain fog. I could be struggling with sexual dysfunction. I could be struggling with, a marital problem that I don't want to talk about it, right? And so we, as holistic health coaches, look at that whole picture. But oftentimes a doctor is just given that one slice and then has to make an informed decision on that one slice. And so oftentimes that it's not the whole picture. It's not everything that's going on, because patients aren't forthcoming. There doesn't seem to be the type of rapport, that you have with somebody close to you or somebody that you trust. When you've got 10 minutes in a doctor's office and you're in there and out of there and you're gone, it's hard to develop that rapport. And I will tell you, a lot of doctors today are changing that. They're trying to spend more time with new patients, trying to get to know, new patients. But, like I said, a lot of times information's not just not available in our medical records, but it's just not available personally. I don't know you. I'm not going to tell you about what goes on in my bedroom. It's kind of a private thing, right? And a lot of patients don't realize, that's the other thing. I notice this all the time with my coaching. A lot of patients don't realize that this information over here that I was just talking about, that seems completely separate from my melanoma cancer, right? We're talking about melanoma cancer. So we don't need to talk about, my infertility issues or my bedroom issues or my depression issues or my grief issues or whatever it might be, my stress issues, because they feel unrelated. Everything is related. I will tell you, after being a health coach for almost 20 years, everything matters. And make sure when you're a patient and you're going into a doctor's office, make sure you understand that the more information you can provide can help a doctor as well. Because when you're only giving them a piece of the pie, they can't solve a puzzle with only one puzzle piece. So just keep that 100%.
In mind. Yeah, it's shocking for some people. I think it's shocking for me sometimes at how much everything is connected, and
completely.
You would be surprised at something that you feel like is irrelevant information.
Absolutely.
Could be very relevant information for a health professional to make a decision for you. But even still, depending on which specialists you speak with, like what they're specifically helping you focus on in that moment, even if you do bring up something that is unrelated, sometimes they might tell you to go talk to a different specialist about that, even though they are connected, right?
Yes.
And that's where I think the benefit of working with a coach, like a holistic coach, they can help you go in, like when you walk into an appointment with your doctor, they can equip you with all the relevant information that you should share with that person, right? And if that person, if you share that information with that person and they say, oh, that's a different issue over here, Well, then either one, you can communicate with them why you see that as a connected issue. And that can be a flag to you that, all right, maybe I need to get a second opinion as well, because this person's not seeing the connection here. Right.
Or maybe I need to look for a different practitioner. That's the other thing that I've noticed is that when somebody's not comfortable with a practitioner, they often are afraid to go out and, you and I've been dating, Tyler, we've seen each other 3 times, and now all of a sudden I'm going to break up with you to go see somebody else. And it feels like a breakup for them, right? And they're fearful to go out and seek, another practitioner because I already took the time to transfer all my records, you know what I'm saying? And I say, follow your heart. Follow your heart. I mean, if you and I had been dating, we were on 3 dates and we were like, follow your heart. I've been married 30 years. Tyler and I aren't really dating. So for those that just tuned in,
that's an example.
yeah, Tyler and I aren't even in the same country right now. But that's what I mean, though. We need to treat it like a personal relationship. And it's okay to do, we often treat it like a personal relationship, and it's okay to pull back and say, I'm going to go talk to somebody else. I'm going to go find somebody else. And that's okay.
So
give yourself permission.
Why do you think it is that somebody, because I've experienced this before, right? I've gone to see a doctor for a thing, didn't like the answer I got. Actually, this example, the very example that I gave in this, I didn't like the answer that I got. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to go see a doctor now because I saw a doctor and they didn't care.
Right.
They didn't give me the time that I thought I should have had.
Right.
Why? And I agree with you. It's important to not just like end it right there, right? It's like you said, if you go out on one bad date, that doesn't mean that you're destined to be alone forever. It just means like, no, that was a bad date. I should go meet somebody else, or I should go, what are the things, what do you see as like things or obstacles that hold people back from seeing other doctors or specialists or getting other opinions?
I think there's several reasons, and they're all individual and they're all personal. But I think one of them has to do with the amount of knowledge and education that a doctor has. How many times have we heard that a physician practitioner has gone to school for 8 years, 12 years, 15 years? So they know all the right answers, right? And so I don't have enough information in my head to even know what to ask or what to look for. And I don't want to ask a dumb question. And I'm guilty of this, by the way, but I don't want to ask a dumb question. I don't want to feel dumb. It already took enough courage for me to show up here in the doctor's office. So I think there is a level of, I'm not going to use the word intimidation because that's not true, but it's just that if you've ever been in a big family, you had your big brother, if you've ever had an older sibling and they were 5-10 years older than you, they were big, right? They were big. You were 5 years old and they were 15, and they could drive a car and they could do so much stuff that you couldn't do. And so you kind of put them in a different category, and then you grew up. And your brother that was 15 years older than you were 40 and he was 55. And all of a sudden you're like, we're just dudes. You know what I mean? We're all in the same boat. And you realize that we're all human. It's the same thing with doctors. We put doctors way up here on this education information pedestal. They know more. They know best. They've had 12 years of education. True. But at the heart of it, they're all human too. And so that's one thing to really remember, is that they're human too. And so I think that's what it is. I think it's a fear of, I'm just a little old me. I really don't have the right to go out and be like, I'm not comfortable, with this. Like, I guess I'm not supposed to be comfortable. This person is more educated than me and has more degrees than me and speaks words that I don't even know what they mean. They actually speak a different language. If you've ever been in a doctor's office, there's a foreign language going on there, even when they're speaking in your native tongue. And I think it's intimidation, to be honest, not because the doctors do the intimidation, but we ourselves don't feel, like we can do that, because we don't have all the tools to ask the right questions or the education. That's
for
one
sure.
guess.
That makes sense to me. I definitely see that, especially, my family's for the most part, a lot of people in my family, if anything comes up, right, if they have a persistent cough or anything, they'll go to the doctor, right? It's just no, like, we're going to the doctor. We're going to let them tell us exactly what it is.
Right.
And
Right.
on one hand, smart. Yeah, outsource it to the experts, right?
Right.
But then on the other hand, oftentimes we're going to the doctors for things. Here, let me just start over here really quick.
Okay. All right, let's do it.
A lot of doctors and pharmaceutical drugs and things like that, they are here to help us. They're here to help us when we have emergency situations, right?
Right.
It's when the headache is so overwhelming, like it's
Right.
distracting, it's hurting, it's at a different level, right? That's when we go take the drug, because the drug is going to suppress that pain that we're having.
Right.
It's not going to fix the issue. It's going to suppress the pain that we're
Right.
having.
Right.
Sometimes we go for the emergency solution for something that is instead more of a maintenance solution.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
a lot of time on the headache side of things, a lot of times most of us are walking around dehydrated, and instead of drinking water to help the cause of the headache, we're taking Advil instead to just not feel the headache. And when we do that day over day over day,
Right.
cool. An Advil, like, you take an Advil one day out of the month or something, no big deal. You're going to help yourself feel a little
Right.
better. It's going to help you get
Right.
through that, as long as you're doing your daily habits and routines to stay healthy.
Right.
But if you have that continued use, if you're taking Advil every day because you have a headache every day,
Right.
you're just suppressing your systems, and that's going to cause a meltdown inside of the body, right? Your
Right.
different systems are going to stop performing at their optimal levels,
Right.
because they're being suppressed, and it's causing other systems to have to work extra hard to make up
Right.
for that. And then they burn out, and now you have multiple systems that aren't functioning properly.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I heard somebody say one time that taking a medication, and we're not talking about acute care. When you get into a situation where you have an acute condition and we're just going to stabilize, that's one thing. But
Can you define acute? Is it acute?
For me, if it's an acute, it's like on that emergency level. This is something that's outside the hands of your regular, what you can do at home and things like that. Things that the 911 button, that you would call, for an emergency, for your acute care. But the daily care, like you're talking about, where I am taking a medication to mask the symptoms, you're not going after the problem. That's the equivalent of driving around in your car and the oil light comes on, right? You're driving your car and you're looking at the panel and the oil light comes on. Well, you stop and unhook the light for the oil light and you keep driving. You don't check the oil, you don't clean the oil, you don't put fresh oil in. You just don't want to see that light anymore. So you get underneath the hood and you pull the light, the actual light, L-I-G-H-T, the electrical part that lights up the oil light, just so you can't see the oil light. Well, it doesn't mean you fixed the problem. You just don't see the oil light anymore. And so that's what you're talking about is, when we're constantly masking the symptom and we're not going after the actual cause, then yeah, it could be like driving on a flat tire. You're eventually going to tear up the rest of the car. You can't keep masking the symptom, for sure. I agree.
Absolutely. So I think that's a good transition into like pharmaceutical medications, drugs. I know quite a few people who are absolutely convinced that the pharmaceutical industry is out to get you. Like they are perfectly fine hurting you just so that they can profit, and they're not here to help you, right? Like they're actually bad people behind the pharmaceutical industry. What are your thoughts on that?
I think pharmaceuticals have their place. I am not a proponent of lifestyle pharmaceuticals. If I'm going to, have something on it every single day. Now, I do know that I have a lot of clients that come to me that are on medications that have helped them function to get through their day. So I need to back up and qualify that they definitely provide a service. So when people come to me, I oftentimes people say, you're just going to tell me to get off all my medications. And I say, oh God, no, 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 no. What they have done is they've made you well enough to get in the car and drive over here to have this conversation so that we can get better. So I love medications for the purpose of stabilizing and providing relief. If we're going to stabilize you and provide relief so that you can then transition into taking action to move forward, then I'm a huge, huge proponent of medications. I mean, people are surprised when I'm like, what kind of medication can we get? Because I know if you're spiraling and you're in, whether it's through pain or, stomach, and you're vomiting so much that you can't keep food down, or you have diarrhea so much that, if you're fading away because you're not taking in fluids, I'm taking you to the hospital and we're going to get an IV drip and we're going to get some fluids in you now. So I'm a huge proponent of using medications to stabilize and provide relief, because that if you can reach for those two things, then you're able to create a space where I can think about how I'm going to move forward from there. And so I'm a huge proponent of the use of medications in an acute position, acute position. As far as using medications long term, that's where I would love our medical community to look towards, finding the root cause, looking at more what's called functional medicine, looking at what's called holistic care. I mean, there's so many different terminologies out there, but the root cause of why you're struggling with this particular issue. But, it's so funny. I do know that, let's talk about anti-inflammatories. Okay. Your NSAIDs, those things that are going to reduce inflammation in your body, your Tylenol, your ibuprofen, those are going to do it. Some of your bigger guns that you get over the counter, are going to provide, are going to reduce the inflammation in your body. And there are times when that inflammation reduction is super important, because it's going to, number one, provide you relief so that you can think more clearly and you can get your footing. But number two, if you can reduce inflammation in an area, you can increase circulation, because blood can now flow. If it's so tight that blood can't flow through that area, it's not good, right? So we're going to reduce that inflammation so that we can get blood to flow through that area so that we can stabilize and things like that. So there's definitely a time and a place for medications, 100%. And especially when I think about my clients that have struggled with mental health, whether it be, have you ever had an anxiety attack? Man, oh man. If you've never experienced an anxiety attack, you will do anything to not feel that way. And I mean anything to not feel that way. And to provide relief for somebody in that moment with a medication, to bring them back down, to calm that central nervous system, to allow them to have focus, to allow them to breathe, to allow them to find help, to seek help and get to the questions and the bottoms of stuff, then I'm all for it. But long term, if we can go to the root, and that's going to be a more holistic approach. So I've actually had clients that have had severe anxiety attacks, and they expect me to recommend, some herbal tincture. And I will look at them and say, oh my God, these are so severe. We've got to get these under control. Let's talk to a practitioner. Let's talk to somebody in the medical field so that we can bring down these anxiety attacks so that you can breathe long enough to create a plan of action for yourself. So when you have an acute condition, I love medication. I think everything under the sun is from, a greater consciousness. A lot of people define that as God. A lot of people define that, but everything under the sun is part of that, collective. And I truly believe that. And I believe that medications definitely have their place. But when you're doing it day in and day out and you're not healing what's causing the imbalance, then I think that can be detrimental in the long term. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think you need to work with somebody to get to the root of the problem and look at a more holistic approach and see if you can't stabilize, the condition and systems that caused the symptom to occur.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What about you?
I agree. I agree that medications, drugs, for the most part, are meant to be either emergency situations or transitionary.
That's a great word.
Transitionary. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right. It's meant to stay, like you said, I think you said it perfectly. It's meant to stabilize you enough so that you can do the daily healthy habits or routines in order to get real health and really address the core problems. Right. And again, bringing everything back to holistic health, we have to look at our whole body. And when I say whole body, I don't just mean the body. I mean our spirit, our emotions, our mental health, and things like that. So many physical conditions are caused from our mind.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yes.
Right. So it's important to ask all the questions, and just taking a pill isn't asking all the questions. Taking a pill is it's a Band-Aid approach essentially. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that that's what it is, and it can't be your only solution.
Right. Well, the way that you would put a cast on a broken leg, if you were to break your leg, we would cast it, right? We put a stent, we put a cast, and we'd ask you not to walk on it until we strengthen that leg. And then we would take the cast off. The same thing holds true with all the other systems of the body. Take the medication or whatever necessary to stabilize and strengthen that. And then let's move away from that until we've improved that area of health so that we can remove the cast, whatever that might be. And oftentimes
Absolutely.
It's a medication.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that as far as the pharmaceutical industry goes, I don't think they're evil. I do think that they're humans, and I do think that they are working under a for-profit model.
Absolutely.
And that has to be taken into consideration. And I definitely think that there are questionable drugs that get pushed through because they have the funding.
Absolutely.
And so it's a case-by-case situation, and it really requires critical thinking for anything that's prescribed to you, to ask yourself, what is this really? What is it actually doing to my body? No, it's not making your headache go away. What is it actually doing to your body? What is the actual biological, biochemical response it's having in your body? Which I know that the average person doesn't want to think about biochemistry, and you don't have to, it's not like we're studying for a thesis, but just having a basic understanding of, why is this making the headache go away? What is it doing to cause the headache to go away? And then think to yourself, is that good for my body long term? Probably not, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, and you bring up a really good point. So somebody like you and I that have some health and wellness background, we know to even ask that question or even to consider that function or that biochemistry. Somebody without that type of background, that type of thinking is not actually going to occur to them. And so that's where we have to give people permission to reach out and find somebody that they can talk to for that, because I can tell you that doesn't cross the minds of a lot of my clients. Like they just look at me and go, I don't give a shit why it's working. I just know it's working. Like do not take that away from me. I'm not kidding. Like I've been doing this 20 years and they don't, because when you have suffered like that, to finally have relief is a beautiful thing. And I personally, as a holistic, health coach, believe it's a beautiful thing. When I finally have relief, then I can breathe, I can think and plot out differently and, consider what I might need to do to heal myself. But I can tell you this, when you've been suffering for a long amount of time and you finally have a medication that provides you relief, you don't want anybody to touch it. You're like, no, I'm not kidding. I've been doing this for 20 years. And you're like, you're not, you can mess with anything else, but you're not touching that drug, because I have been suffering so long and so severely. And it is completely naive. And even, I don't know, it's just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not just naive, but it's this attitude of, I know what it's like to walk in your shoes, or I know better. No, we don't. We haven't walked in their shoes. We have no idea what it's like to suffer with migraines. We have no idea what it's like to have anxiety attacks so bad that you can't breathe. You know what I mean? So no, you want to do a big F you to those people that are like, okay, we got to get off that drug. So that's why when you're working with somebody that has a holistic approach and understands the importance of medication and how you can work to build your body back up. But I can tell you right now that it takes a while, and not everybody's got our background or our education. It's hard because you play both sides, when you sit in my shoes, because I want to talk about the for-profit thing. I do believe the pharmaceutical company is a for-profit business, but I don't know too many businesses that aren't a for-profit business. Mm-hmm. So I am a nutraceuticals supplementation consultant. I have been for 15 years. And we make a profit, so do the herbal companies, so do the people that make comfortable mattresses, so do your doctors. And so do you and I. I mean, as a wellness coach, I have to earn an income and have to earn money. So the question isn't whether or not somebody's making money off of it, because somebody's making money off of everything for the most part, right? Even health coaches charge for their services. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more about finding something that aligns with you, your values, your beliefs, what you want to do. And if you get to the point where you think, I've been on this medication a long time and I want to talk to somebody about the long-term effects of it. I want to talk to somebody about maybe weaning myself off of it. Just make sure you raise your hand and can do that. I think oftentimes, and it's happened to me a lot, when somebody finds out that I am a health coach, oftentimes they will hide what medication they're taking because they're so afraid I'm going to say, oh, you need to get off of that. And that's not what, when you're working with somebody that truly is into integrative wellness, we understand that mentally and emotionally, you have to be ready for those things, and it's all connected, taking a medication away from somebody that has finally found relief will throw them into a shitstorm that nobody wants to be in. So a good integrative health coach is never going to say to somebody, I'm going to take away the one thing that's made you feel good in the last 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be very careful about how we say it. But I will tell you on my side of it, I think the human body is a miracle. I think the human body has the ability to heal and recoup and restore. If you can grow fingernails and you can grow hair, if you can cut yourself shaving and it heals, all of those mechanisms for healing are in every cell of your body. Every single cell of your body has the ability to replicate, reproduce, heal, rejuvenate, restore. And so I believe no matter what it is, that we can get to the root of it and that your body has the ability to heal. And it's mind, body, spirit. It's not just physical, right? You got to heal on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level in order to truly find wellness. So although you hear me talk, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth right here. I'm like, stay on the drugs. And then the other part of me is like, you can get off the drugs, but you've got to work with that individual and where they are.
Yeah. And I think that's important. An important note is that it should always be a red flag if somebody's a super extremist in any way. Right. And so as a health expert, health coach, we should be on the side of, yes, in some cases drugs are good. In some cases, not for this certain thing. It would be a red flag if somebody was super extreme in that case. And it is important for coaches and for, patients to understand in their coaches that bioindividuality is a really important thing in every case. And so if you have a sense that somebody's bringing their own confirmation bias into your conversation, like you can get on a call with somebody pretty quickly and we're smart, we pick up on social cues really easily. If we get on a call with somebody, we can pick up pretty quickly if this person has like something they're trying to push, right?
Right.
They're trying to push us towards their solution.
Right.
We can pick
Yeah.
up on that pretty quickly, and that can be a good flag to us. But
Right.
yeah, like you said, a sign of a good health coach is that they're asking you questions. They're learning about you. They're finding out things, and they're not trying to take away the things that are bringing you relief. Instead, a good health coach, what they're going to do is they're going to introduce new habits one at a time and try to crowd out the things that you don't want to have in your life. And,
Right.
but they're not going to tell you, you tell them when you're ready to be done with the
Absolutely.
drugs. But the thing to keep in mind is just that I can't think of, there are cases, but there are very few cases where you should be on drugs for a long term.
Right.
Right. So like
Right.
having that mindset of, yes, this might be bringing me relief right now, and it's serving a purpose right now. It is not a forever thing. This is something
Right.
that's meant to be transitory. And I want to work with an expert to help me implement other things in my life in other holistic ways while I continue to take the medication.
Absolutely.
So that at some point I don't have to take the medication anymore.
Absolutely.
Right.
And there's some cases where you're never going to get off a medication. So I have clients that have had their thyroid removed because of some sort of thyroid issue, whether it was cancer or damage or whatever, and they no longer have a thyroid, which means their body is no longer able to make thyroid hormone. Those particular clients will continue to take thyroid the rest of their lives, right? And so there are instances where, you're not going to ever remove a medication. But when it's for pain and inflammation, that's just an imbalance in the body that can be restored. Some take longer than others, but I have seen it over and over and over again that you can restore, the body, so that they no longer have to rely on medications, whether it's a cholesterol medication, whether it's an insulin, medication for controlling blood sugar. We have all of these medications out there that control bodily functions, your blood pressure medications, your insulin medications, your cholesterol medications, and all those types of things are actually controlling bodily functions. So the idea is to get the body, which means you have to get the mind and, and emotions, because it's all connected, to a place where they can handle and manage that physical symptom on its own without the medication. And that's the goal, for a lot of people. And if that's not your goal, then that's okay too. It's okay to reach out to somebody and say, I'm too scared, because fear is terrible for the body. And if somebody is too afraid to move away from a medication, then don't even broach the subject. Like, you've got a lot of other things that we can work on that'll support and buoy that person's health, without needling them about the one thing that, they're afraid about. You don't want to introduce fear when you're talking to somebody.
100%. Yeah, no, I saw that firsthand. Actually, one second, I'm going to plug my computer in really quick. This is a great conversation, by the way. I'm really enjoying this. I saw firsthand when my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. She was diagnosed with the cancer, and those first 2 weeks after she was diagnosed, she was getting blown up by doctors. Her phone was ringing all day, every day, with doctors saying that you have, like, we're predicting that you have 2 more months to live. This is really bad. This is not that you need to do chemo and radiation, even though chemo and radiation isn't actually going to, it's not going to save you or anything. It's just maybe we might be able to get you an extra month of life. Right. And my mom was 43 years old or 42 years old at the time. Yeah. So three extra months of life didn't sound very appealing, right? But every day she's getting blown up by doctors, and she felt this fear, this anxiety, right? Constantly, these professionals with all these certifications, all this experience are telling her she's going to die. And she doesn't even feel sick. She's 42 years old. She feels healthy. She just has a lump on her breast. Right. You know what I mean? And in those 2 weeks, her tumor doubled in size. Yeah. And at a certain point, we said, okay, enough is enough. She said, enough is enough. Right. I'm not going to keep taking this crap. Okay, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. but I'm not going to sit here and be harassed. I'm not going to sit here and be scared this whole time.
Yes.
So she stopped answering the calls.
Mm-hmm.
And what she started doing instead is she started seeing this guy in our area where we lived in Ohio. His name's Brian, great guy.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of different therapies, from Reiki to sound healing to different things that aren't necessarily treatments for cancer, right? Like the sound healing is not going to cure your cancer, right?
Right.
But what it did though is it relaxed her body, and she stopped taking the calls telling her she was going to die. She started going every single day to just like focus on feeling calm, feeling optimistic, feeling happy and grateful for the things in her life. And that's not the only thing we did. We did a lot in that period of time in the beginning there, but starting at that point, like we really see that as like kind of the catalyst that started to change things.
Right.
And her tumor shrunk drastically.
Yeah.
Over the next month.
Yeah.
And we were able to eventually turn it from an inoperable tumor that was already in all of her primary lymph nodes. It had already metastasized to her bone. It was very advanced, very aggressive cancer. And we were able to, with lifestyle habits, with nutrition, with an immense amount of supplementation and things like that. And I don't recommend this for everybody who gets cancer. This is just what we did. And that tumor went from inoperable to a very minor surgery. Now that's not to say, because it was metastatic cancer, that doesn't mean that like, hey, cancer was gone and we were completely in the clear, but we did see firsthand like the difference between that fear, that anxiety, that stress and pressure versus focusing on treating the fear as well, and treating the stress and trauma that comes with that as well. That's something that often gets overlooked, right? We're so quick to say, okay, chemo, radiation, we're going to burn this cancer out of us. We're going to cut it.
Right.
But what we don't take into consideration is that our body is extremely stressed in that time, and it's causing havoc on our systems, on our body's systems. And that needs intentional focus as well when you're treating anything, really.
Yes. Well, and I think this might actually be a topic for another podcast, is to talk about, getting the body in a healing state versus in an emergency state. And I would love to expand on that particular topic, because that is huge, getting the body in a healing state, going from your sympathetic nervous system being activated to your parasympathetic nervous system. And I think that's a fantastic thing to talk about on another podcast. Because I agree with you.
Agreed.
That's one of the things that I do, is we talk about what we can do to get that body, because the body does not heal when you're in that fight, flight, or freeze. Once you've triggered that sympathetic nervous system, you've shut down all of the body's access to those healing modalities that lie within. You can't be stressed and rest at the same time. They don't exist, and so rest is where restoration and healing occurs. So, sometimes it's so simple, but let's make that another podcast, because I have a whole list of things that I would love to talk about helping people. The simplicity of it sometimes doesn't give it the bounce and the merit that it needs, like, hey, we're just going to sit and breathe. Okay. Would you actually give me something real to do? Damn it. I breathe all day long. And so people get frustrated. So let's spend some time. Let's note that for another podcast.
Agreed.
So what else do you have on your list of things? So like pharmaceutical companies versus, traditional medicine and all that type of stuff. What other questions did we want to cover today?
Yep. So the first question that we talked about was, are doctors bad? Like, can you trust your doctor? Are doctors bad? Do they have your best interests at heart? Right. Or are they qualified to make decisions on your health? And you
know what? We don't know the answer to any of those until you interview that doctor. You should interview a doctor just as much as the doctor interviews you. If you don't take anything away from this podcast, it's that you have the right to interview that doctor and make sure that they feel aligned with you and what you're looking for.
100%. It's a case by case thing, right?
Absolutely.
Every person's different, and some people just connect with you in a different way, right?
Absolutely.
So some people hear something from you that another person misses, and it's a good thing to get multiple opinions.
Right.
And like you said, yes, it's good to interview your doctor, and it's good to disagree with your doctor. It's okay
Absolutely.
to disagree with your doctor. It's absolutely okay. But still, even if you disagree with somebody, like sometimes, and this goes for like in a lot of things in life. This is a very holistic thing as well, but it's good to listen to the people we disagree with and hear their point fully as well.
Absolutely.
It's not a good idea to just disagree with somebody and then put up your guard and not hear them at all. It's fully understand their point and ask them why they're coming to this decision.
Absolutely.
Why is such a powerful question to ask, and you can ask why over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like why do you say that this is what I have? Okay, why does that lead you to believe that this is what I have?
Yeah.
What is it about that makes you believe that this is what it is, right?
Yeah, and share with me. And why are you recommending this treatment? And absolutely.
These are really good questions to ask, and if they are the kind of doctor that you want to work with, somebody who is they're a service worker, like you mentioned before.
Right.
They really care about helping people. They will be more than happy to answer your questions. They will not be annoyed by you asking questions.
Yes.
They're not going to be looking at their watch saying, hey, I've got a busy schedule, I've got to go. They're going to give you their full attention if they care. And that's sometimes why doctors are a little late. That's why they leave you sit in the room a little longer, because they're spending some time with their clients, and that's what they should be doing.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. That's a really good point to make. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So that question, yes. Some doctors could be lazy. Some doctors could just not even understand you completely, or whatever it is. It's a case by case thing. Most doctors are really good. Most doctors want to do good. And yes, so there's that. Is the pharmaceutical industry bad? Are they trying to hurt us? Are they just trying to take advantage of us to make money? Complicated.
Very complicated
thing to answer. Like you said, prescription drugs have a place, and they serve a very important role in our health and wellness in certain cases, in certain times, or for certain amounts of times. Yes, there are pharmaceutical companies out there that are questionable. They're shady. They do shady practices, and they rush medications onto the market without doing proper testing or
well, we've heard of them. It makes it on the nightly news, that this was approved too soon and now they're pulling it off the market. I mean, that absolutely is out there. So we as consumers have to do our research. If we were going to buy a new car, gosh, people will research for 6 months on buying a new car. They'll look at all of the safety reports on it. They'll look at, over and over and over again. When we get on a new medication, which is going to go in our body, we don't take the time often to do the research and to dig deep. And I encourage people in today's information world, it's there. You just have to look for it.
Completely agreed. It's so true. I mean, even just today, so we're going to, my girlfriend and I, we're going to Japan in a month. And the amount of time that I spent reading about this translator device that you can talk into and it translates so you can have conversations.
Right.
I put so much research into this one little device that I'm renting for $40 for 3 weeks.
Right.
And it's funny because there are a lot of people that will do like an immense amount of research on things like that. But then when it comes to, like you said, when it comes to their health, like what they're being prescribed with, they're just like, oh, okay, well, the doctor said I should take it, so I will. Or I know that this could be bad for me, but my doctor, it's important to give that same intentionality to the things you put in your body.
And find out the why behind a medication. Because the research is there. All of it is there. So let me just give you a quick example. So with cholesterol medications, there's some cholesterol medications that actually stop your body from manufacturing cholesterol. The body manufactures cholesterol. Cholesterol is a very important building block of our cells. So it serves a very vital function. I know the cholesterol gets a bad rap, but without it, none of us would be here. Okay. And so, but there are two types of cholesterol meds. One type of cholesterol med actually slows down the production of cholesterol in your body. There's other types of cholesterol meds that actually stop the absorption of cholesterol from the food that you take in. Okay. So that's something that's going to affect the, in your GI tract, right? So you're taking that medication. And then when I eat food, it stops and slows down the uptake of cholesterol from foods that you consume, because you have cholesterol from foods you consume and then cholesterol that you actually produce, right? So actually knowing the function behind the medication can help you understand things. Because I just recently had a client that was telling me that they were having some GI issues and that they thought it was affecting, the gut brain. That's another podcast. The connection between the brain and the connection between gut health is huge. But that client actually said to me, I wonder if it's this new, cholesterol medication. And I blew it off at first because I thought, no, because that's going after your body producing cholesterol. And when we were in this conversation, and then this client said, no, I'm on this type of cholesterol med, which actually does affect the way food is absorbed. And I was like, oh, so we are dealing with a GI issue, so understand the function of your medication, and it's out there and it's available, because it will help you connect the dots when things show up in your body. Some pain medications will affect the pain receptor sites, and other pain medications go in and they affect the inflammatory response in the body. And knowing that can help you understand the other pieces of what you might be feeling or experiencing. And if you don't know, reach out to somebody that can help you do the research. There is so much information out there. PubMed.com is one of my favorite resources for looking up information on, how something's been researched, what it's done, and all that type of thing. It's called PubMed.com. But if you don't know, reach out to somebody that might be able to help you, do some research. But understanding how that medication works is a really good thing to know.
Totally. I think this whole conversation is really good framing of the value of having a health coach. I think that this is this could be a webinar to sell our services as health coaches, because it's true.
Yeah. Shameless plug for health coaches.
100%. But it is true, because there's such a huge need. This goes back to the first point that you made in this podcast episode. What we opened this with is you were saying that everything's disconnected. You have this specialist that's focusing on this thing, this specialist that's focusing on this thing, another doctor that focuses on this, and they're missing important pieces of communication in all of this. And a health coach essentially, what the health coach essentially is like the glue or the mycelium that kind of connects all of that together. We can help you bring all of these different silos of your health together into one place, into where we can have discussions on it and give you all the tools, resources, knowledge, and questions that you need to be equipped to go into your appointments and get the real most value out of it. And then get to the point where you don't need to be constantly having appointments all the time. Right. Because you're in good health and your body is in a healing state and it's optimized to keep you in that state.
You bring up a really good point. My uncle, God rest his soul, he's passed, but my uncle tinkered with mechanics. He could do stuff, with a car. That wasn't his profession. His profession was something else. But my uncle, tinkered with mechanics. He would buy, cars and fix them back up, and, he could do all sorts of stuff. And when my parents did not know anything about cars and mechanics, and when something would happen to one of our cars, my mom would call her brother and say, hey, this, and go, the car's making this funny sound, or this happened at a stoplight, or that happened. And my uncle, who had a back knowledge about cars and how they work, would say, listen, Franny, when you go into the mechanics, make sure you ask this question, that question, and you know what I mean? Because he had a working knowledge of how that car was supposed to sound when it drove. And so we do it with other stuff, right? We do it with other stuff where we get some help from other people. And I think that's what a health coach can do. The way that my uncle used to be able to guide us before we even ended up at the auto shop body repair place. I think a health coach can help you do that, when you end up in front of a practitioner, because they've got some background knowledge that the average person doesn't have, about the form and function of the body, the way that my uncle did about the cars and how they worked.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, I think this has been a great conversation. Is there any other points that you feel like we should bring up in this conversation that haven't been brought up yet?
The one thing that I want to share is that just because something is for profit doesn't mean that it's bad, because pretty much everybody that I know is doing something for profit, to earn an income, to earn a wage, and that doesn't make you a bad person. So whether it's the pharmaceutical companies or the supplementation companies or all the other things that are out there, there is going to be a profit that's going to mean off of that. So don't use that as your litmus test for whether or not you're going, to do something. But that being said, do your research. Not all supplementations are created equal. Not all drugs are created equal. Not all doctors are created equal. You have got to be an advocate for yourself. Give yourself permission to be your own advocate. And so many people feel scared, helpless, don't know which questions to ask. And in today's information world, you can literally gather all sorts of information that's out there. So I would just say, do your research. And my second thing would be listen to that internal guidance. If there's something in the back of your head that's like, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you need more information to feel comfortable, or you need more information to go somewhere else. Just because you get that little alarm that goes off in your head doesn't necessarily mean you're going to turn away from it, but you've got to create enough information so that you feel good about what you're doing. I know Tyler was talking about his mom and the radiation and the fear and the fear and the fear and the fear. That's not a good feeling, So you've got to ask enough questions and get to a place where, you feel comfortable moving forward, whatever that might be.
Totally.
Take the time to invest in yourself, because when you're doing the research, it's you that you're investing in. Okay. Just remember that it's you that you're giving yourself time to do that. So, and you're worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely worth it. And
Yeah.
we're going to have another discussion, like you said, about getting the body into a healing state.
Yeah.
I think the consensus here is that our health industry is very optimized towards, treating symptoms and being more of an emergency care type
Yes.
of system. Right. And that's
Yes.
good. That's a need that we need that. Right.
Yeah.
What I would challenge and invite people to do is to start taking more initiative and being more leaders in their own life towards the proactive care, towards the long-term health and wellness and happiness and all of that. And if you are somebody who wants to do more than just take the pill, like you want to start doing things to feel better, and you want to challenge yourself, or you know that there's something better for you, that you could be feeling a different way. Or even if you are, somebody who does need to go to the doctors and are looking for an advocate, or just somebody that you can bounce things off of, and maybe you don't have that person in your life. We would love to have you in the Powerful People community. It's a free digital group. It's made up of dozens of health coaches and also just very powerful people. And the way that we define powerful people are people who take initiative in their life. They see something and that they want to change, and they go to make that change, and they're capable and willing to step up and do the things that they need to do. Right.
Absolutely.
And so being surrounded by these kinds of people is, one, it's very uplifting and empowering for each person in the group, but also it's a resource for you. If you do have an appointment with the doctor and something doesn't feel right and you want to run it by somebody, you can run it by our group. You can bring it to our coaches. You can there's people that are available to you that really care about you, and they really want to support and help. And we're not pushing an agenda. We're not trying to talk you into, even though we brought up health coaching as, like, I do see health coaching as solving a really big problem in our health industry.
Right.
We're not going to try to push you into health coaching if it's not right to you.
No.
But what we want to do is just give you perspective, and that's it. And you can take that perspective and make your decisions because you know best what's best
Absolutely.
for you. But please, if you feel alone or if you feel like you don't know who to trust or who to talk to, you have a group that's here and we're willing to talk to you. And you can see for yourself, just based on the character of the people in the group, once you get to know the people here or you have a conversation with people, you realize that we're all just kind of leading with our heart, and we're not trying to manipulate anybody into
Absolutely.
any decisions that they don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable with. Right.
Well, and I think all of us believe that when you uplift one person, you uplift the entire planet because we're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in this together. And I think every one of us feel that way. And the more time you spend with us and get to know us, it'll just show up because that's, they say that when one candle lights another candle, it doesn't take anything away from the candle that I hold to light another candle. Right. And that's the way we feel. We want to light everybody's candle.
And have you ever noticed if you take two candles and you put them together, the flame gets bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of a similar.
Yeah, we're powerful.
similar
We're more powerful
thing,
together.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been isolated a lot with COVID. We've been isolated a lot, just on our busy lives. And we don't take time for community the way that we used to. And so we want to create a community, even if it's here online for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. I think
Absolutely.
that this is a good place to wrap this conversation. Listeners of this episode, if you have any thoughts that you want to share on this, or if you have any questions based on this conversation, or a strong opinion that you feel like we missed something, or you just want to make sure that this gets shared, Powerful People community is also a good place for that too. So we welcome the discourse. This is not meant to be us talking at you. It's meant to be an invitation into a bigger conversation. And we hope that you join the conversation, because the more people that do, the more people that become advocates for their own life, the more great resources we have in this world, the more great energy and that we can spread and help other people as well. And we can do better. We can do good in this world. We don't have to. The more humans could be a really good thing for this world if we just kind of bring that kind of intentionality and focus, right?
When people feel better, they do better.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it works.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all of them. And if we're not, let us know in the Powerful People community, and then we will be on that one.
Absolutely.
So we look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Thanks, Stephanie.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.